We're hearing today that the Japanese government has transferred a billion yen payment to a foundation established by Korea as part of the landmark deal on Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during the Second World War. It's another step towards following through with the December 28th deal. More on the implementation process and what's left. Here's Kwon So-ah.
News of Japan having transferred 1 billion yen to Seoul on this Wednesday as part of a deal struck between Korea and Japan for a more future-oriented relationship. But here in downtown Seoul, as they have for the 1,246th Wednesday for almost a quarter of a century, this group of people remain unstirred. Rain or shine, victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery system and civic groups have been gathering in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul to raise their voice, calling for a sincere apology. But a landmark agreement between Seoul and Tokyo was reached in a bid to resolve the issue.
And that's why Japan continuously demands the removal of the Pyeonghwabi, or the Statue of Peace, which represents and commemorates the so-called comfort women.
2 decades ago, the first victim to speak about the Japanese military's wartime sex slavery gave her testimony. On December 28, 2015, Seoul and Tokyo's top diplomats shook hands to resolve one of the thorniest issues between the two countries.
The issue comfort women was a matter which, with the involvement of the Japanese military authorities at that time, severely injured the honor and dignity of a large number of women.
Under the premise that the Japanese government fully implements the bilateral agreement, the Korean government confirms that the issue has been bilaterally settled, finally and irreversibly.
Where does Japan stand at this point when it comes to fully implementing what was agreed back in December? One of Japan's key promises in the deal was the sum of 1 billion yen, or roughly $9 million intended to help heal the wounds of the victims. As agreed, Seoul established a foundation, which was launched 7 months after the deal, while Tokyo gave the green light to the 1 billion yen payment, transferring the amount to the Reconciliation and Healing Foundation on this Wednesday. Roughly 80% of the money will be given in cash. The surviving victims will receive around $90,000 each, while $18,000 will be distributed to the families of the deceased victims. There's been some ambiguity on the nature of the money. While the victims want concrete compensation, meaning that Tokyo takes clear legal responsibility for its past wrongdoings, Japanese officials do not see it that way.
Japan claims the fund is not compensation, but money given on humanitarian grounds. That's how we should see it.
That's why some say the money is not much different from the Asian Women's Fund, through which the Japanese government and the public provided donations to Korean and other Asian comfort women in the 1990s. But this professor says otherwise.
This time the fund comes entirely from the Japanese government. I think of it, and we must think of it as compensation. It's what the Korean government had initially requested.
Apart from the debate on whether the money is compensation or not, experts also say the ambiguity of the agreement leaves room for different interpretations by Japanese politicians and opinion leaders. Some could take the transfer of the 1 billion yen as a channel for Japan to clear itself from past atrocities once and for all.
If you carefully read the actual letters of the agreement on December 28th, there is no question that transfer of the fund from the national budget of the Japanese government constitutes a very important part of the agreement to be fulfilled. But that's not the end of the story. That's not the end of the story. The Japanese government should continue to do all the necessary measures to restore the honor and dignity of all the surviving victims of the wartime sex slavery in Korea.
This especially so for the victims to acknowledge Japan's sincerity. Lee Ok-sun, one of the 10 surviving victims at the house of sharing in Gwangju, south of Seoul, hoping for more efforts on behalf of the Japanese government.
우리 희망이야. 사죄해야 되지. 사죄받기 요구하지. 사죄를 하면 그게 배상이 다 따라오잖아.
누가 사죄해야 된다고 생각하세요?
사죄 일부 책임자가 해야 되지. 누가 해야 돼. 나도 이제 언제 죽겠는지 죽을 날이 오라지 않는데 내 죽기 전에 사죄를 받을 것 같잖아. 그놈들이 하는 짓으로. 나도 사죄를 받아보고 죽을 것 같잖아.
89.4 is the average age of the victims of the Imperial Japanese military sexual enforcement of women before and during World War II.
8 months after Seoul and Japan reached the landmark deal, opinions still differ. What is changing is the number of surviving victims. 46 as of December 28th last year, 40 today. 권소아, Arirang News.